Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Gisela, and I will be the host for today's webinar. Before we dive into the content, let me cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application engagement tools that you can use. All these engagement tools are raisable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can also expand your presentation area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any audio or video issues, you can find answers to some common technical problems located in the Help widget at the bottom of your screen. Please note that the copy of today's slide deck and additional resources are available in the resources space. Please have a look and download everything that you may find useful. On top of this, the webinar will be recorded and sent to the email you registered with. Lastly, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We are here to answer you live in the chat, so don't hesitate to reach out. If we run out of time or don't manage to answer your questions, we will be sure to follow up later by email. Now, I will hand it over to Mario, who will give you a quick introduction to our speakers and go over today's agenda.
Thank you, Gisela. Hi, everybody. My name is Mario Moldari. I'm joined today with Sheila King and Preston Mitchell. Just a few sentences to introduce us, and then we can get into the content. I'm Mario, and I'm the Director of Solution Architecture here at Jama Software. Prior to coming to Jama, I worked at IBM for 13 years in various product development roles, including a number of years as the Chief Test Architect on the DOORS and DOORS Next product lines. I joined Jama Software 3 years ago to lead up the technical pre-sales team. We work with clients and prospects to solve business challenges, including migration from legacy requirements tools such as DOORS. I'm joined by Sheila King from Rockwell Automation. She has been an embedded software coder and product development for 30 years, working on several interesting products. 3 years ago, she jumped the fence to work in requirements management, certifications, and accompanying tools, and she's been at Rockwell for 22 years. Preston is the VP of our solution and support teams with a focus on scaling our customer delivery quality and efficiency as Jama Software grows. His experience is centered around complex product development for Fortune 500 companies and the US federal government. Preston is a subject matter expert in product management and requirements management best practices. Today's webinar has a fairly informal agenda. We do have some PowerPoint slides to help us along the way, but ultimately, we're here today to listen to the experience of Rockwell Automation in their migration from DOORS into Jama Connect. We'll leave some time for questions at the end, but please feel free to submit them as we go, and we'll try to answer them in real time. If we don't get to your question during the call, we will ensure to follow up with you after the webinar. Now let's get started with a fairly straightforward question then. Sheila, can you explain how Rockwell Automation were managing their requirements prior to implementing Jama a couple of years ago in 2019?
Yes, so Rockwell has some business units that have functional safety products with the 61508, and although it's not widely used at Rockwell, teams have solved their traceability and requirements management at the business unit level using classic DOORS. Other teams were using homegrown requirements tools and traceabilities, including Doxygen, and yet other teams were using Word documents and Excel spreadsheets and doing the manual brute force way of doing traceability and requirements. But then when the security landscape changed and we realized the vulnerabilities of industrial automation, the 62443 cybersecurity specification was invented, and we decided that we needed to use it. So we needed a site certification, and in the process, we adopted the IBM CLM product with the DOORS Next Gen, RTC for planning, and RQM for test management.
What led you to consider making a switch away from the tools that you were using, and why was that change needed?
Well, we were already in the throes of adopting the CLM D&G tools and developing our product lifecycle in order to meet the 62443 certification. And we decided in that process that we really needed to up our game. We needed better tools for planning tools for our test integration and continuous integration and delivery, and we needed better tools for requirements management. That included the ability to move data widely between products, because that's real life, In the current tools, the DOORS next gen tools, we needed to use the RecIF, which was really an administrative thing as opposed to people being able to move their own data. We also had the solution for DNG and RQM and RTC was, and we hired a third party, or we contracted a third party vendor to manage that, and we decided we needed a better integration for that for our vendor. We also, for the tools themselves, we needed variant and configuration management and native real-time traceability.
Can we spend a few minutes looking at the primary considerations you have for selecting Jama as opposed to DOORS Next Generation?
Yeah, so we actually created a grassroots working group to evaluate tools. And we evaluated several. Our top two were, of course, Jama and Helix. Both the tiebreakers were this. Jama had functional safety ready certification, and anybody who goes through functional safety knows how much value that is for your audit. We needed a strong review center, and Jama has that. We needed baselines in order to be able to not have to use SAP for saving our documents. We like the rational database and the ability to configure different item types. We not only use Jama for our requirements, but we use it for our threat models and our fault models. And we also liked a lot the structure, the permission structure that allows you to specify all the way down to a requirement if you need to, how you're going to protect your data in the tools. And with our fault models are designed for security and threat models, that is our business risk or business restricted setting. So.
Thank you. We know the value of an organization's environment is their data. You spend a lot of money buying tools and maintaining tools, but the real value is the data that you have inside of those tools. Can you share some of the concerns Rockwell had going into the migration?
Yeah, so first of all, we not only went we were going to having all our data in the cloud. And so we had our CISO team get involved in that, and they did an evaluation because not only were we now putting requirements in the cloud, we were putting our source in the cloud with Git, we were putting our planning, our tests in the clouds, our anomalies in the cloud, some kind of scary stuff to have in the cloud. And so we had a CISO audit, and they decided that it was very safe to do that. Secondly, when it comes to actually planning, after actually keeping our data safe, the truth is we asked Jama to explain to us how they were going to keep it safe, and they convinced us that they could, and so they'll tell you how they kept our data safe. You guys.
Maybe that's a good transition to the next question. This is just a discussion around where there are any specific steps you took to protect the data and IP.
Yeah, so, we had to, because we had such a short window for moving all the content over, we made backups as it was in our current tools, and then moved them into the tools, and we used the RecIFs, the collections, and all that stuff from DNG, and just about every other way you can export data out of that, and backed it all up. And then once we moved it into Jama, handed it over to the Jama team, and they imported it, and then we migrated it and Jamatized the data once we had it inside.
Maybe we could bring Preston into this as well. And so can you and Preston share some of the details around the migration approach?
Yes, I'll go ahead and let Sheila start, and then I'll jump in after.
So we had, just as I mentioned, we had six months to do it. So we had 3 phases that we started with. We worked with our stakeholders to identify all the content to be migrated. And then we, had the extremely tight window. We elected, like I mentioned, to bring it over into Jama as is.
Thanks, Sheila. Yeah, the slide that's being presented right now basically illustrates the standard migration approach utilized by the Jama team and our partners. Every migration is going to have unique elements, needs, but in the case of Rockwell's migration, this template married very well. As Sheila was taking care of the planning, we transitioned really seamlessly into analysis and discovery. During the discovery and proof of concept stages, we did come across a few issues, very common in migrations. So we required some customized tool development, but once we had validated the integration tools and the approach, the final stages was a fairly straightforward process. Sheila was generating all of the extracts from the legacy systems, and she would transfer those to the Jama team, and then we would load them into Jama Connect. And as Sheila said, in some cases, we go through a cleaning of the data prior to migration. But again, given the short window for this migration, we just elected to bring all the data over from DOORS Next Gen, which in some cases, some of the modules had over 170 attributes, which we were able to consolidate and clean down quite a bit later. But again, with a short time frame, we just elected to bring everything in as is, clean it up afterwards in Jama Connect because they were coming up against a pretty critical deadline where they were losing access to their DOORS